a trophy.
Hello and welcome to a... Could you put more juice into that, please?
Stepping all over.
Just, well, I mean, I'm fine with you stepping on it.
Hello and welcome to another fine episode of
Yes.
Midlife Krisis.
Dude, I would absolutely enjoy a Casio keyboard given to you as a prize on Double Dare. Thank you for bringing it to the fucking waltz, young man. Finally.
It was on my bucket list was to be on Double Dare.
Oh,
so.
God, yeah. Could you imagine? So, real quick.
Yes, I can.
Yeah, very much so. What? Okay, on the obstacle course.
Yeah.
What was your favorite attraction on the obstacle course?
I always liked the muds. Anytime they were sliding down mud, and then also this is a little weird. It wasn't on the obstacle course, but I think it was one of the physical challenges when you'd have to like go up a nose. There'd be like some kind of disgusting nose.
Yeah.
And I always thought that even though it grossed me out, I just thought that was really cool.
So the nose is definitely my favorite. It was. I don't remember it ever being a physical challenge. I remember it always being in the obstacle course, and it was like filled with like green like pastry pride frosting.
Yeah.
And you'd have to find the flag in it.
Yeah.
All right, here's the deal. We're doing a Mark Summers podcast dedicated to all of his vehicles.
Hold on, wait, one more thing. Did you ever watch the game show about where you'd have the obstacle course where you would put video games, like you would tie it to your body?
Yeah,
right?
buddy. Yes.
I used to, like, before going to bed at night, like, think about, that'd be the last thing I thought about before going to bed, like what games that you could just... how many games you can hold on to?
So if you're not familiar, I think the show was called Video Pro, if I'm not mistaken.
I just watched some clips on YouTube recently, and it was a fun time.
Yeah. So like the whole ending of the show was you would wear like a Velcro suit, and you would be like running through the aisles of like a KB Toys or something,
right?
And you just stick whatever you want onto your suit. I also had fantasies about this show, and obviously anyone who didn't immediately just jetpack it to the video game section on that show, I'll never understand. Never understand that. But that was. We should probably do an episode all about video game shows from our childhood.
Oh yeah.
I am close personal friends with one Phil Moore, host of Nick Arcade, and he would happily appear on this show. More on that later. But you know what, Uncle Bob? We are nearing as we record this. We are nearing the end of 2023. A lot has been said about the quality stream of games that have come out this year. It's been a real good year for games.
Yeah, very good. In fact, you're more current than I am. So can you remember a year that was this chock full going back in time?
Oh, God, yeah. 2002 was gigantic.
Well, that was 21 years ago.
1998 was
How about in the
longer?
last 10 years?
Okay. No, probably. I think you have me there. This is in the last decade. This is probably, well, actually, 2013 is probably that other, which is literally 10 years ago. But 2013, the world is on fire with the Wii U, flying off the shelves.
Yeah.
But you had like games like Wonderful 101, which I love to this day. I love that game so much. One of my favorite platinum games. It came out the same day as GTA 5, so nobody bought it.
GTA 5.
GTA 5 came out that year.
Last of Us.
That was that. Yeah. So 2013 was a really good year.
One. I think
this year reflects that.
2018, I think, had both God of War, the 2018 God of War, and then also Red Dead Redemption 2. Those are two all-timers.
Yeah.
So maybe that one.
But this one that we are currently wrapping up has been one for the books, one for the wallet too. Let me tell you, because I bought a lot of these games, and just looking at my Amazon wish list shit, I've spent more money on games this year than other years, so that tells you something.
One cool thing, and then we sort of covered this, at least from my perspective, when we talked about video game errors, is that it's really nice when you have a year where there's great AAA products coming out on almost every platform.
Oh yeah.
Xbox a little light this year. Their offerings of Starfield and Redfield.
More on that later.
Yeah, not so great, but certainly Sony and certainly Nintendo and certainly PC. You're just getting a heap and helping of everything great from those platforms. So it's been good.
So being that it is, as we record the end of November, there might be one or two games coming out next month, but we didn't play them. There are, since we're both working full-time working professionals.
Yes, we are.
We can't play every single game that came out this year. So a couple qualifiers before we jump into this conversation. This is a part 2 a part 1, part 2. Part 1 will be my picks for games of the year. These are the games that I picked as my personal favorites, the ones I enjoyed the most. I'm not putting up any other qualifiers like sales or any of that bullshit. This is just my personal favorite games of the year. I don't know how you curated your list, but you are a more analytical thinker than I am. So maybe you've got more bells and whistles behind your picks.
There's
than
a
I do.
formula. Yeah.
There's a rich exponential formula.
I can't reveal it. It's like the Coke recipe. It's
Makes
just,
sense.
Yeah, it's a
I would
secret.
never look. I would never
secret.
ask that of you. I would never do that. But yeah, the caveats are, I ain't got time to play everything, but I played what I played, and I love these games, and I want to talk about them.
Okay, but between you and I,
Yes.
we have covered, I think, almost all of the traditional games of the year, and like either you or I has played almost everything that has been nominated for game of the year.
So right now, as we speak, I am behind on. I haven't played Alan Wake 2 yet.
Right. Me neither. So that's one gap.
And I haven't played Baldur's Gate 3, and there's literally no way I'm playing that game before the end of this year.
I don't know that you'll ever play it.
There's in high likelihood I'll never play it. Now, I've talked about on the show, we did a whole episode talking about how much you love that game. And I'm sure it is, well, I mean, looking at all it's like universally being praised and people love it and all those things. So like in the spirit of that game, I did legitimately want to get around to it. I did. But I am finding as I get older, even though I probably have, well, for a big chunk of this year, I inarguably had more free time than you did. But even that, like, I'm pretty much only going to be playing 100-hour game per year, as I've just discussed. And once I've burned that ticket off, I'm not playing another 100-hour game in a year. It's just not going to happen.
Okay, so when we were talking about this online together, I told you, like, when I was finally done with Baldur's Gate, and then you told me the games you had played while I was playing Baldur's Gate, and there was like 6 games or something like that during the time it took me to beat that one game.
That's correct.
So that's the sacrifice that you have to make.
Yeah.
If you want to play through that, I won't say slog in terms of hours, joy in terms of experience, but it's one game. It's like World of Warcraft or anything else. Like, do you want to just play one thing or do you want to play all the things?
Right.
Ideally, I'd like to play all the things.
If
you
could, I'm with you
if
there.
I can, I'm more like you in that way. And in fact, I try to resist games as a service and never in the endless games and roguelikes and all that.
You were a
stuff.
user. You're reformed. You try to no longer go back to that
Well,
lifestyle.
the problem though is that we're still living in the crack den that is video games. So
although
that's
that's changing, man. Like more and more, I see talks of service change or service games that are either being canceled or going away. There's definitely a shift.
Was saying that they were going to do like 13 games. And now they're saying that, well, we're only going to do 8 of them. The other 5 are maybes. And you're right. There is kind of a pushback against all of it. And good.
It's a deserved, earned pushback.
Yeah, definitely.
But I'm sure we'll pick up that conversation at another finely curated episode, artisanal
episode. Yeah.
Real quick, 8 minutes in, little housekeeping. We're on Spotify, so if you enjoy this show and you have a Spotify account and you want to listen and or watch, because you can do that on Spotify, you can watch us and only listen to us and or listen to us. Fuck you, you know what I mean? But that is available to you there. So check us out on Spotify. Give us a follow. Give us a 5-star review. It helps. Also, like and subscribe to this program. Tell your friends. And we have social media bullshit coming. Special shout out to the Wonder Mundo. I'm making that all happen.
Please like and subscribe to justify Wonder Mundo's existence within our show.
Yeah, I'll be a little warmer on that and say thank you for the help. And really appreciate what you're doing for us.
Now get back to work. Get back to work right now.
Okay. And speaking of getting to work, let's get right on to it. So these are my top 5 games of the year. And let's start with number 6, my honorable mention. This is a real quick one. And I debate this. It almost did go into my top 5, but then I did a little rejiggering. And so this is the only honorable mention I want to mention before I get into my top 5. So the HM of my list is Hi-Fi Rush. You just said minutes ago Xbox has had a bad year.
Yeah.
And it has. Redfall is bad. Starfield really seems polarizing. Like people do love that game, and then a lot of people are just kind of tired of...
The tide has turned against it.
Yeah, and I think people are just tired of what Bethesda... They're tired of Bethesda games.
I believe it's below 7. It just recently got below 70 on Steam now.
Okay, well, there you go. So anyway, Hi-Fi Rush was like this gem in a real down year. And it's this quick little game, rhythm, music infused action game where like every little thing you do in the game is a part of a rhythm. And if you're out of rhythm, you are punished heftily and mightily, as you should. But just the style of the game, I'm a huge sucker for cell shading. I've been a fan of cell shading since Jet Grind Radio came out on the Dreamcast and coined the term cell shading. I think it is a timeless look when it comes to 3D video games. And this game had so much charm. The music was great. The characters were great. I can't think of another game that I played this year where I was genuinely laughing out loud while playing it. So the writing of this game is excellent, and for someone who has publicly stated, I am in camp Miyamoto on this. I don't give a fuck about stories in video games, but when they are there and they're good, I will make mention of it. And so Hi-Fi Rush is one of those. Just a great experience. If you are a Game Pass subscriber, this one is a no-brainer. It's on there. It is like a 5-6 hour long game, so it's just this perfect little nugget of a game. And it was made by the team that made The Evil Within 1 and 2, which is like a surrogate team from Resident Evil makers. So like, this is not a game that you would ever expect them to make. Like, there's no eviscerations or like weird Freudian mommy stuff in this game.
Freudian mommy stuff.
It's just one hell of a beautiful looking action game with a great soundtrack and the gameplay hook being that of a rhythm action game. Everything, it's just perfect. Very, very nearly made it into my top 5. So special shout out there. Any discussions on Hi-Fi Rush before I move on down my list?
No, because I haven't played it, except now that you said that, and being a Game Pass subscriber, I think I'm going to play it, especially given the length of the game.
Yes.
But I'm interested because you said it nearly made it to your top 5. So if it had made it in, it would have had to have bumped whatever your number 5 game is.
Yes.
Which is?
Hot take time. All right, so my number 5, consulting my list, make sure I do this right. My number 5 is Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom.
Oh, that's a hot take.
Yeah. So okay, we just talked about how I've only got one per year. I got 100-hour game in me per year. That was Tears of the Kingdom for me. So I think the things that it does. Okay, first and foremost, why is this not my number 1 game of the year? Well, it's not my number 1 Zelda game. It's not my number 5 Zelda game either.
Wow.
It is a great. So again, a bad Zelda game is still a great video game. And I'm not saying this is a bad game. What I'm saying is that it is so derivative of Breath of the Wild. It is impossible for me not to feel disappointed and let down by it. Like when they've done.
You're saying that you've done 720, I think, on this game. When we did an episode on this show where you talked it up, and I was like, oh god.
Well, it's my top 5 game of the year. I'm gonna talk it up. Like, there's some talking up. I'm going negative first before I flip the pancake.
You just said disappointing. How could you be disappointed?
I'm disappointed because specifically it's a direct Breath of the Wild sequel. In the same way that when I was a kid or teenager, when Majora's Mask came out, I was also equally and your brother, producer of the show, will vouch because he was there. He lived this too. It was, just kind of looked like another Ocarina of Time. And I didn't go back and play Majora's Mask until years later when the 3DS remake came out. And then I found out how wonderful and weird and like outsidery of a Zelda game it is. It really truly is like in its own thing. It's a wonderful game. Can't recommend it enough. But it looks exactly like Ocarina of Time. Tears of the Kingdom looks exactly like Breath of the Wild. You're in the same world. I already spent 100+ hours. I think with the DLC on the first one, I think I had like 175 hours in that game. Oh, it's a long time to play in one world. Okay,
it turns out.
So that's the most disappointing thing about Tears of the Kingdom and why it's not higher up on my games of the year list. Now it's still a fucking Zelda game, so it's on my goddamn year-end list because it is. There's so many great things about it. They are the whole mechanic of building whatever it is that you want. That you can't touch that. Like it's like a Minecraft level of customization to where like the things that I've seen people do online that I could never would have thought of in a million years to try on my own. Like that shit is genuinely inspiring. And like I've gone back to play here and there since I beat it to just do that, to just focus on playing with the mechanics of the creative suite that's in that game. That's by far the runaway star of the show. You can tell it is the thing that they spent the most development time on, is making this stuff work. And like the feeling of fulfillment you get when you go to try to solve any sort of environmental puzzle, and you just can overthink the crap out of it if you want, and like engineer like a gyrocopter that has guns that like has like a circular power circuit or something, or you can build a dumb long bridge and do the same exact thing and accomplish the exact same goals. So like the fact that Nintendo,
I'd be building the dumb long bridge. That's me. That's
well,
me.
I built my fair share of dumb long bridges in this game because it was long, and there was a points where I wanted to get past it. So it was like disappointing in that I expected more, and maybe that's on me. Maybe that's me being a little naive, and I shouldn't have expected so much. But this is, look, all Zelda roads lead to me back to Wind Waker. I've said on the show many times how much I love that game. In the overall scheme of Zelda games, it's very likely to remain my number one until they make a Wind Waker 2. But the fact is, like, that game was so different and so off the Zelda beaten path that I know that they're capable of doing it. But they just didn't do it this time. And like, I'll excuse it. Like, they had the Breath of the Wild engine. They obviously did that work. Breath of the Wild was such a massive hit for Nintendo, such a big seller that like, if you deviated too far away from Breath of the Wild, you probably would have alienated that new attained mainstream base of players that you got from Breath of the Wild. So I do understand all of that stuff. But yeah, it's hard to walk away from this game and invest the time that I did into it and not feel that level of like, well, it could have been this and it wasn't. But what is there is an excellent game. It did feel like, and I'm sure you'll mention this. Well, you kind of already did when you were talking about Baldur's Gate 3, which I know is on your list. A game that's that long, that's this long, it's gonna feel like work. Like very few. The only games that I can't even like. Animal Crossing at times, even though it's funny to say this because it is literally doing tedious work, it won't really feel like that. Like, especially if you're playing with friends and that kind of stuff. But like the hour commitment that you're going to put into an Animal Crossing game, like, I don't know. Like, there's just something about it where it's a weird complaint to say like there's too much stuff in this game. So I feel a little shitty saying something like that when there's far bigger things to complain about. But like, look, I can't help the fact that I am where I am in life, and
I am where I
can't afford to play these long games like that, and so inevitably, invariably, like a game like that does feel a little chorish. But look, that's on me. I'll own that one. But those are my only two negatives about it.
Okay.
It wasn't very inspired, and it was a little long in the tooth for me. All things considered,
climbing.
Though, let's talk about climbing real quick. I never want to do it in a video game again.
If the show accomplishes two things, it will be to get Metroid-like into the zeitgeist, and also to get less climbing in video games.
Climbing. Just stop. I don't want it anymore. I've done it enough. Figure something else out. And that's from your old pal BT. And that's free advice, Nintendo. I suggest you take it. So anyway, that's my number 5, Zelda Tears of the Kingdom.
All right.
Where are you on that game? Have you? Where are you? What's your status on that game? Oh, that's wrong camera. There's the silence. That's the one. Still haven't played this one.
Check back with me when we're doing the 2024 top
2024 top 5.
Yeah, I'll mention Tears of the Kingdom as my honorable mention for 2024's top 5.
That's reasonable. That's all the way reasonable. Okay, my number 4. Again, consulting the list, so I get my professionally guided. That's what I thought. Okay, so my number 4 is, and I'm gonna have to make some arguments to back up the dating of this, but Resident Evil 8, Resident Evil Village is my pick, but I'm picking very specifically the VR version.
I will allow this.
It did. Okay. I have heard that the VR, that there have been mods, user created Steam mods to be able to play this game in VR. I heard that after the fact. I don't know if that's true or not. And you, brother, you know me, I'm just not going to do my research here. So that being said, technically, maybe this was in some form on VR before this year. I don't really know. But I know I played it on VR this year for the first time. And I know that it was a launch title for the PSVR 2.
And that's why I'll allow
yes.
Because it came out on PSVR 2 in February. Right?
Which you and I both bought when it first came out. Now, let's talk about where the PSVR 2 is today in November of 2023 versus where it was in February. And that's a whole lot of nothing happening.
I was going to say.
And it does definitely kind of feel like Sony just kind of like blew their nose with this thing, released it, into the wild and then just kind of walked away.
And it sucks because at the time that we did that episode, what I had said was that I was afraid that the price point and just the general nicheness of a VR device might scare away developers from taking time to make games for something that's going to have a pretty small install base. And then it looks like that's kind of what happened. And a lot of the best games on the system are something like a remake or a port or whatever that takes less development time than something that's just built organically from scratch. And now all these months later, I was hoping to get Half-Life VR, Alex VR on it, and we still don't even have that.
You and me both, pal.
The quintessential VR
That was a game where, when this thing came out, I thought for sure it would have been announced and released by now on PSVR 2, because Sony and Valve have had relationships in the past. Like, it's not out of the realm of impossibility. In fact, I would have firmly put it in the realm of possibility, but it hasn't happened so far. So anyway, it's unfortunate. This thing was expensive. I still do enjoy it. I still play Gran Turismo 7 in VR. It's breathtaking. An even better experience than that on VR was Resident Evil 8 for me. If you go way back into the archives, we do an episode real early on in the show's run talking about just VR. And you and I are like, we're beaming children with how excited we were with this thing.
Sure.
And a big part of my talk up was Resident Evil 8, and that is unchanged. It's the single best VR experience I've ever had. I had such a good time with it that I refused to buy Resident Evil 4 and play it in 2D. Like, I just won't. I'm waiting for the VR version, which is announced and is being worked on and is definitely coming out. So when Resident Evil 4 VR comes out, I'm playing it day one. But I am so jazzed up for it because of how good 8 was. It is, I can't even qualify how much brain trickery, at least for me. Now, people's experiences with VR, it's one of those things. Your experience may vary with just a regular video game. With VR, it's even more because you have other mitigating factors. Like, a lot of people can't experience stereoscopic vision with their eyes, or a lot of people will succumb to the motion sickness. So I get all that. I am lucky in that I'm in this little sliver of people that I get nothing negative about VR at all. I can play it for hours and it doesn't affect me. And I can do the full kit and caboodle. So I don't need the vignette when I turn in VR. I need a full frame works for me.
Welcome to my bloody pit of evil sacrifice and demonic conjure sorcery. I am the evil being from Transylvania, known as Uva, and I am here to ruin the mood. Here we go.
Wait.
You get a milkshake with your number 8. That's fucking great. I love you, Mom and Dad.
Okay, so you said that you're lucky, but you're not actually lucky because you actually had to put the work in. You had said that you were experiencing motion sickness and then had to just kind of power through that.
No, so I think I'm lucky in that once I did power through it, I've never had the negative effects since then. Okay. Some people that can do the power through method, and they will always throw up on the floor if they play Beat Saber. So yeah, there was like the whole like first like weekend of me having PSVR 2 where like I played it a lot and kind of felt like I was taking some sort of weird dissociative drug because I would look at my hands and they wouldn't feel like it was a total out of body thing. And it didn't look like my hands. Yeah. Very weird, especially with someone. I had super limited VR experience before owning the PSVR 2. So then to go from that to playing for hours, that was something. But that initial hurdle was over. So yeah, and it does suck. Like that's the thing about VR is like not everyone can enjoy it for its maximum potential, and I think it's just the way it's going to be. So unless some fucking brain wizard engineer can figure that out, like this is just how it's going to exist. But for someone who can have a great experience with VR, Resident Evil 8 is the way to go. The graphics, like it uses the whole foveated rendering thing where you look, it like renders better. And it's amazing. Like I couldn't believe how good that game looked in the headset. And there were times where I was legitimately afraid.
Didn't you say you yelped a few times around your
family?
Sure did. It scared you?
Yeah, there's if you go back to our VR episode, I talked about this, but I was playing the House, I think it's called House Bin Viento or something like that. Always mispronounce the thing of that. But it's so just in regular 2D Resident Evil 8, it's like the scariest part of the game. It's maybe one of the scariest parts of like the whole Resident Evil series, and in a series that started being horror campy and then like towards the end of the PlayStation run it got more and more serious. Resident Evil 4 was like serious as a heart attack, and then 5 and 6 got more campy and kind of less like horror, more action. 7 was like pure horror, and 7 rules, and that was also in VR, but it hasn't been ported to VR 2 yet. I really would love it to, because that's a genuinely scary game. And then Village it has moments that are genuinely scary, and then some campy werewolf kind of stuff mixed in there. A good blend. But in this one particular sequence, the House Ben Viento, you're in this like underground mansion type thing, and you're all alone, and it's very dark. Every turn is a super long hallway where you're just waiting for something to jump out at you. And they do. And I did that. I was playing in front of my wife, and like totally did like a Ned Flanders. It was pretty good. I looked real butch. But yeah, if you have the means to try this game, if you own a PSVR 2, if you have a friend who is cool and will let you borrow one, I think you can routinely buy Village. It's always on sale. It seems like it's always on sale. I just bought it I have an iPhone 15 Pro, and I downloaded it there just because I could, because it runs on that phone natively. Great game. Cannot recommend it enough. Double that for VR. It is the way to go. It's the way to, if you can, it's the way to experience this game.
The best experience.
Yeah. Like I'm at this point, I'm spoiled. Like I never want to play a Resident Evil game again, not in VR. Like that's now going forward, like the experience that I want with these games. And hopefully that continues to happen, but we'll see. Let's see what Sony does with this $650 peripheral that they sold us and have done relatively very little with.
I don't think I can. I just don't think I can do it, Brian. I did Alien Isolation. We just did an episode on that. I don't think I have the intestinal fortitude.
Well, I'll tell you this. I'm going to bully you into it, and we're going to do it for this show because just think of the content.
like many of your ideas, content which is humiliating for me is great content.
Oh, well, yeah, the whole world agrees with that.
The whole world agrees. But
they just need to see it to know it.
I'm not sure I'm that secure of a person.
Okay. So. All right, that's fair. The bullying campaign will subvert for now. So yeah, that's my number 4 pick.
Okay.
Have you played any? You haven't played any Resident Evil game. Is that correct?
Not a single one.
Not a single one.
Yeah.
Okay. It'll be interesting to see if you ever do and where it is that you start.
Go down that road. I thought about both 7 and 8 because I'm into modern games now, so I considered it. But then I had played. I think we had talked about this, but I had played some other horror game, Outlast, maybe Outbreak.
Oh yeah, Outlast. It's Outlast.
Outlast. Okay.
Yeah, those are pretty good.
And it's a game where like you're holding a camera and the battery is always running out. Okay, and then you go into like some kind of insane asylum, and then there was this bit where there's like a wheelchair at the end of a hallway, and then you get close to the wheelchair, and then there's a jump scare because somebody appears in the wheelchair. I just noped out of that game at that moment, which is only like 45 minutes into the game. I was like, look, I don't need this in my life. I just don't need this.
No, I understand. Like, it's like you're willingly, even so, Sans VR, it's like you're willingly subjecting your not young body to stress on purpose.
Well, let me make a comparison for you, which is that you and almost everybody else in my life routinely makes fun of me for playing games that I don't really like to just get platinum trophies in them through completion. The closest analog I can explain, I guess, to that would be you playing horror games, because it's just like that kind of tension and that kind of, and then the jump scare, and then like you're doing that. Like, just like it feels bad. It just feels awful. So like, why am I doing that?
Why subjugate yourself to it? Well, look, it's probably the best comparison you've ever made in terms of like the neuroses of being into horror in general. It's like, yeah, why do you need to see that kind of stuff? What does that actually mean? And look, I'm
see and feel.
Yeah. Well, this is probably a deeper therapy type question that we'll get into. But in the meantime, Resident Evil 8 VR is my number 4 game of the year. Number 3. Now, I think, so for me, my number 3, I don't know where this is going to be on your list, but I think this is probably going to be the only game that is on both of our lists, and B, that we both played all of and enjoyed as maximum enjoyment. And for me, I enjoyed it all the way up to my number 3 game of the year position, which is Pikmin 4. We did a whole episode dedicated to Pikmin 4. Yep. Well, it was really more like the Pikmin series, but a lot of the bulk of the talk was 4. Brother, man, this game makes me feel like I'm eating warm, crispy buttermilk waffles right out of the iron.
Good. That's perfect comparison.
It is like
right out of the oven. Right.
The iron, the waffle iron. Or the fucking clothes iron. I'm white trash. You never know. But I mean, it hit every note that you would want it to hit. It just knocked it right out of the park. Yeah. Like, it is. So I've gone back when Pikmin 1 and 2 came out. I started playing those games again. I immediately beat Pikmin 1 because I kind of know that game inside and out. And it's a quick little breezy game if you know what you're doing. If you don't know what you're doing, that game can end up being one of the longer Pikmins, because you have to do that game right to beat it, basically. And Pikmin 2 is real breezy. Pikmin 3 is where it gets a little longer. We're looking at like a 20-ish hour game. But Pikmin 4, if you do everything there is to do in that game, that's like a solid, and I mean like beginning to end, good experience. It never wears out its welcome. Yep. But it's like a solid 40, 45 hours.
I was going to say 40 hours, yeah.
And I loved every minute of it. Yeah. So I did everything that you could possibly do, with the exception of like a couple little rescued persons challenges I didn't do, like filling, I think the Piclopedia I didn't fill out, something like that. But in terms of like the big experiences that you can do, I did them all. The way that they have improved the movement, just the feeling of movement with that cute little dog. And by the way, the dog, Jiminy Christmas, you get so attached to that thing. And as the story progresses, and like there's some, to keep it spoiler free, there's some light peril that dog faces later in the game after you've grown super attached to it.
Light peril is a good way to put it.
So like, it's just beginning to end like a charm bomb going off. Like it's what Nintendo does better than anyone else in the games industry, in my opinion, is like make this thing that any kid could enjoy, and any adult who isn't like, you know, lying to themselves and trying to say that they're more mature than they actually are. Like, if you can beat that barrier down into yourself, put down the Call of Duty, and check out this game, like, you know, if you're a decent tax-paying citizen, you'll enjoy it. But I really do think it's one of the best first-party Nintendo games that they've done in a long time, just in terms of like how it kept everything that you wanted for it to be, and then iterated on all of those things in such a perfect way.
We waited on it for a really long time, years and years and years, a minimum of 5 years, and
a maximum of a decade, if I remember right.
From the original
passing, when Miyamoto just goes, Pikmin 4, it's done. It'll come out when we're ready for it.
10 years later.
Yeah, 10 years, fucking generation later.
Right. But it was great. So it's like you wait a long time. This is why when Half-Life 3 comes out, it'll live up to the hype too. Maybe
it's definitely coming out.
Yeah,
definitely put your money on that Kickstarter, pal. The return is guaranteed.
So we wait all this time for Pikmin 4. Pikmin 4 comes out, and it is just every ounce of it is very cute and very fun. It is on both of our lists. I'll talk about it a little bit more when we do my list. But that game was just everything that I wanted it to be, and a little bit more than what I wanted it to be. And
that's important to say that too. Like, I feel like expectation for fans of Pikmin, we were starved from the last release. The Pikmin 3 Deluxe did come out, and it was like a stopgap release, but it was a double dip. That's what it was. Yeah. It added a couple new things, but really minute. It was just a game that not a lot of people played because it came out on the Wii U. But so if you're going back to the original Pikmin 3 release, like we just established is like 10 years. There's so much that could have gone wrong. This game could have been like just a popcorn fart.
Half baked.
Yeah.
Could have been,
and the fact that it for a game, like very rarely does something have this long in the tooth development cycle and it deliver. I'm thinking of Duke Nukem Forever. Yeah. I'm thinking about these Half-Life games that are never coming out. Starfield took forever, and now what came out is not exactly the desired reaction that they wanted. Yeah. But Pikmin 4 is one of those rare games that just completely delivered on everything. The fans love it. It made new fans. It is the best-selling Pikmin game. It sold, I think, 2.6 million units. Great. So
bodes well for Pikmin 5,
which will be coming out in somewhere in the 2030s for sure. That was the one. So my one criticism in this game about this game, which really isn't a criticism, it's just like the shot of reality, knowing full well that this game was this good, and the likelihood of me getting another experience like this in this franchise. It's not gonna be out next year. Like, it's gonna take a long time. So it's gonna be a bit. It's gonna be a wait. For all you F-Zero fans out there, F-Zero 99 is a great game, but it's not the game that you wanted. And I think Pikmin 5 is way down the road. So that's a negative, is realizing that this great experience is all we're gonna get for a long time. But hey, man, we don't work at that ivory tower as much as we would love to, but
Nintendo knows what it's doing. It just sat on Pikmin 4 for 10 years, and then it came out, and it was wonderful.
Yeah, it was great.
So it's like, okay, guys, I guess we trust you.
Yes. Well, I obviously do. These are all, by the way, I reorganized these by publisher, by spine. So here we go. This is all Nintendo. All that second shelf.
Oh, I see that.
All the way there. So those are all Nintendo games, and then the rest is the rest. So that's my number 3. Now my number 2. Yes. Okay. No surprise here. My number 2 and my number 1 that was my biggest conflict is putting what where.
Mine too, by the way.
Okay. So that is to say that my number 1 and my number 2 are very, very, very close together.
I have literally no idea what game. I mean, you and I talk about games a lot.
Yeah, we sure do.
I don't know what you're going to pick for number 2 or number 1.
Okay, well, I'm gonna I'm gonna ISO you for your reaction when I say that my pick, my number 2 game of the year, almost my number 1 game of the year, was Street Fighter 6. I mean, come on. I mean, obviously. I love fighting games so much. I was just with a friend. Shout out to J-Lack of the immortal Jeffries channel, Jeffries Travels YouTube channel. Cannot recommend that enough. If you want to learn about this fine golden state, and you want to look at one hell of a body, make your way on down to Jeffries Travels.
Well, I hope that's how you talk about me when I'm not around.
Oh, it's physical appearance exclusively. Just a handsome, well put together man. And that head of hair, you would not believe how old he is. Anyway, that's all the compliments you get out of me for the year.
All right.
So drink it in. Street Fighter 6, as a fighting game lover, as I was saying, I hung out with Jeff the other day, and all we did was play fighting games. It's my favorite genre of fighting game, or fighting games were my favorite genre as a kid from the Street Fighter 2 boom, and I've just simply never gotten off that train. I've always paid attention to fighting games. I will always pay attention to fighting games. Daddy loves fighting games. So with that, Street Fighter 6 is one hell of a fighting game. So let's just, 2 parts here. Let's talk about Street Fighter 6 as a fighting engine, and then let's talk about the bigger star of the show, which is the World Tour mode. As a fighting engine, Street Fighter 6, I think, corrects a lot of the problems that a lot of people had with Street Fighter 5. Street Fighter 5 had a very, very rough launch. It wasn't a complete product, like by anyone's definition when it first came out. And the engine on top of that, like the V-Trigger stuff was it was interesting because it gave each character its own like identifiable and specific to them trait, which like helps in terms of like keeping fighting tiers like honest with each other. By no means am I like an Evo tier fighting game player. I just really love fighting games.
Yeah.
But I, as an outside viewer of that stuff, like I know that is really important. But for my intents and purposes, like I just like to play these games. I do play a little bit online until like I lose 3 or 4 in a row and then I quit, as you do. But when I'm on a streak, it feels good.
As you do.
But I genuinely enjoy playing these games in single player. Like I like unlocking story stuff, but I love to go through like the challenge modes and like try to perfect the combos and stuff like that without the stress of being beaten to death by a teenager. I just remove that and I can practice on the combos as you will. So I'm able to get a good feel for the fighting engine doing that in addition to playing online. And the fighting engine is great. Like they streamlined it. They took a lot more inspiration, I feel, from Street Fighter 4, which was like a really big, important Street Fighter game that pulled the masses back into the genre. And then Street Fighter 5 lost them in the same way that Street Fighter 3 lost the Street Fighter 2 crowd.
Right.
Like they just became a smaller, more niche audience. And 6 seemingly brought a lot of the Street Fighter base back, and with good cause. Like it's everything that they brought back parries from Street Fighter 3, but it made it in a way more accessible way. So that it's like more fun and more open for newer players to try. And all the characters that they brought back, like they picked some winners. And of course, because this is a business and not a charity, they saved some of those characters for me to purchase down the road as DLC. But what are you going to do? It's a modern video game.
Yeah, that's what you do these days.
That's just how you do it. But the new characters that they designed, I'm a fan of. I think Street Fighter at times could have been guilty for going too weird with some of their new characters. Now, for me, that's great. Like you can't go too weird for me. I love characters like Q and 12 from Street Fighter 3. That weird Fang dude from 5 who did all the poison attacks is great. Street Fighter 6 has those as well. Like there's some wacky characters. The new Psycho Power guy whose name escapes me, but he's got like beautiful flat pressed white hair and kind of looks like Colonel Sanders. He's great. So all that stuff is really cool. So if that was just what this game was, I'd be happy as a Street Fighter fan, as a fighting game fan. But it's not all that this game is. Okay. This game features the World Tour mode, which is hands down, far and away, the absolute coolest single player thing that Street Fighter has ever done. It is like a fully featured role-playing game where you, from the ground up, customize a fighter, everything about the fighter, like all the way he looks. You've seen in our previous episode where we gush about Street Fighter 6, you'll see how
you made a very handsome man.
Such a dapper, not at all freaky looking beanpole of a man.
What was it? Were the hands too big or too small?
Way too small, pal. Feet too big, hands too small, forearms like Popeye. It just looked like, and then super wide set eyes, like triple Dwight from The Office wide set eyes, and a little gross mustache. Just had the time of my life curating that. But then, so you can make like the ugliest human being you want as a character, or you can like replicate Terry Bogard if you want. And then as you play the game, like you study from the different Street Fighter masters. So like you literally learn moves from Chun-Li by being her student, and you just kind of bop and bounce around the world map doing that. The story it exists. It's a story. Nothing like that's super memorable or anything, but it's just the experience of doing this. This is something that like I dreamed about doing in a Street Fighter game since I was a kid. Right. Like I love the fighting mechanic.
Having a very ugly man learn how to punch from Chun-Li
with tiny little carny hands. Like very important. Hands that when you shake them you feel uncomfortable. But no, like the whole idea of like creating your own Street Fighter from scratch and then having them go and engage in street fights. It's fucking awesome. And then you can take that character, and if you're better than I am at these games, you can then enter that character online and compete like this in this like sub meta game of, it's almost like Pokemon-esque in that like people take their characters and they perfect them with their movesets, and then they compete online to see who's made the best freak. Yeah. And it's everything I've ever wanted in a Street Fighter game. My only criticisms are that it is a little too capitalisty, but like this day and age, you can't. Mortal Kombat 1 suffers from the same problems. Like it's a great fighting game. That would have been Mortal Kombat 1 would have been another one of my honorable mentions, but I'm not going to take the time up.
Okay, I wanted to ask you, but I didn't want to step on you because I don't know what your number one game is going to be.
Yeah,
because you liked Mortal Kombat 1 as well.
It's a great game,
but I guess compared to Street Fighter 6, it's not
In the Street Fighter 6, the World Tour mode is so
puts it over the top.
Oh, way over the top. Like there's nothing in Mortal Kombat 1 that equates to that same mode. Now it has like the invasion stuff, which is like a live service thing, unfortunately, but it's not as egregious as like an Avengers or something like that. It's okay. The single player in Mortal Kombat does have a more engaging story, as they've kind of always had since Mortal Kombat went modern. But yeah, man, there's just nothing in that game that is as innovative to the series as World Tour mode, or something that is like as requested. I genuinely think a lot of people who grew up playing Street Fighter wanted something like this to happen, where like they just kind of blow the doors off and make like a really, really compelling single player mode, and they did. So yeah,
and then maybe this is a good time for us to mention that probably in both of our opinions, Capcom is the studio of the year based on all the bangers they've been putting out lately. That includes Street Fighter 6.
Yeah.
But they put out a couple other things this year that are also awesome, right? I can't even think of.
Yeah, I mean, Street Fighter 6 would have been the big one. Resident Evil 4 has gotten like lots and lots and lots of praise, and it is great. But Resident Evil 4, it's a remake of one of the most beloved games of all time, so like, there's a bias there for sure. But I'm not. You're not going to hear me say a crossword about Capcom. Yeah. 2 of their games are on my top 5 games of the year list, and I've been a fan of Capcom for as long as I've been a fan.
And then they're behind Monster Hunter, right? So.
Well, there's no new Monster Hunter this year.
Okay. But last year was a Nintendo one.
Yeah, last year was last year was Sunbreak, which was like the big DLC expansion to Rise.
Okay.
I mean, and their expansions in that series, like they're so big, that it's like a whole new game. But yeah,
it's incredible. They do Monster Hunter games.
Yeah.
They do Mega Man games.
Yep. Resident Evil.
They do Resident Evil, and they do Street Fighter. 4 different genres, very different types of games, one studio, and they're all good.
And an argument is kind of being volleyed around on the internet right now about this. Like Capcom has stopped innovating and doing weird new things, which I would argue that point, because they did release Exoprimal this year, which it didn't light any charts on fire or anything like that, but it's a cool game. It's on Game Pass. It's fun to play online with friends, shooting dinosaurs and being a dinosaur.
It qualifies as weird and
it's great
and different.
And it's on Game Pass, so check it out, no brainer. But Street Fighter 6. I'll butt it up on this, and then move on to my number 1 pick. Street Fighter 6, can't recommend it enough. If you love fighting games, I would say this was the fighting game of the year thing. Yeah. Street Fighter 6 is number 1 with the bullet. Hands down. But it is not. It is overarching, so we're doing that there. Now, before I roll into my number 1 pick of the year, I do have 2 additional shout outs that one of them I just did, which is Mortal Kombat 1, so we can move on. The other shout out that I think is very important, and it very nearly made my list, and that's RoboCop, friend.
Oh man! So since you said that, I was like, oh yeah, maybe RoboCop would be his number 1 game.
Well, I ruined that for you. So no, it's not my number 1 game, and it didn't crack my top 5. It's in my honorable mentions. I said Hi-Fi Rush is the only one. I lied.
RoboCop, you have 3 honorable mentions.
Yes. Well, I'm a liar. I mean, it's fun to lie.
No, Brian, don't do
it. It's fun to lie, and you get a lot done when you do it. But RoboCop has no business being as good as it is. Like, everything that is in its favor shouldn't be there. Like, it's made by this company that no one even knows who the fuck they are. This company's only made licensed games. Like, they made a Rambo game and a Terminator game.
How are those?
Apparently, they're, for being low budget action games, they're both pretty decent. The Terminator one better than the Rambo one, but this RoboCop game, Jiminy Christmas. Like we talked about in a earlier episode, we talked about Alien Isolation and how effective it is at aping the movie that it's inspired by.
The aesthetics,
RoboCop, maybe better than that game, maybe better than any game I've ever played. And I'm not just saying that. Like, I really firmly believe this. Number 1, RoboCop is like my number 1 movie of all time. 1A, 1B. Like, it's so. The 3 movies I've seen in my life more than any other movie are RoboCop. We're
going to get a Kurosawa movie here.
No, they're definitely not. RoboCop, Bloodsport, and Point Break. Those 3 movies I've seen more than any other movies.
And also Citizen Kane.
Boring. Snooze. Didn't do anything. Who'd it beat? It didn't beat anyone. But of those 3, I've probably seen RoboCop more than the other 2. It's a fucking brilliant movie. And it's not just like, oh, Brian's an idiot, he likes violence and 80s movies. No, fuck you. RoboCop is a legitimately well-made movie. Yeah. It does satire better than most satire movies do.
We actually united.
I wrote a fucking 30-page paper about RoboCop to graduate college. I know what I'm talking about. It's a wonderful, incredible movie.
Can I please have a copy of this thesis of yours?
Yes, you can. But yeah, it has no business being as good as it is, and it's really, really good. My only criticism is that there's some padding in there, but that's probably more to the fact that it's a low-budget game.
What year did RoboCop the movie come out? Was it 87?
87, yeah.
Okay, so that's the aesthetic, is that 1987 aesthetic?
Yeah, so the RoboCop game, it takes place after RoboCop 2 because they keep referencing Nuke, which is the drug that they use.
RoboCop 2.
So I enjoy RoboCop 2.
Do you murder children in Rogue City at all?
Not so far, not yet. You're of course referencing the crime boss in RoboCop 2 who was like a 10-year-old. So RoboCop 1 is a masterpiece of American cinema, even though it's directed by a Danish filmmaker. But it's a masterpiece of American cinema. Like
I'll buy
fucking
that for a doll.
Yes.
So.
A masterpiece. RoboCop 2 is an entertaining, campy little movie, not anywhere near as bad as RoboCop 3, which is a piece of shit. But RoboCop 2, like, I admire it purely through nostalgia. As a movie, a legitimately good movie, RoboCop 2 is not that.
Is anybody who's involved in the original RoboCop, either the writer or the director, do the sequel, RoboCop 2?
In fact, RoboCop 2 is directed by Frank Miller, the comic book writer, the Sin City guy, and it's not good. He also wrote the movie. It's not good. It's just too campy. Like, it's too unbelievable. Like, the crime boss is a 10-year-old boy. It's fucking stupid. Yeah. You're insulting my intelligence. And when you make a movie as good as RoboCop 1,
masterpiece of American
fuck
cinema.
with it. And they fucked with it. But whatever. And we're not going to talk about the remake because I just flat out ignore its existence. It's not real. It's not a real movie. No one made it. There's only one RoboCop and it came out in 1987.
Did you see the remake when it came out?
What remake? It didn't happen. It didn't happen. So anyway, that's
I love all the content that you're bringing to this episode.
That's
all of it.
My honorable mention is RoboCop. Check it out.
So wait, hold on. What's the? Well, that's not even your number one game.
That's not my number one
RoboCop.
game. I forgot how much I wanted to talk about RoboCop, so I popped it in there.
But tell me very quickly, what is the actual gameplay of the RoboCop?
Oh, it's awesome. So it's like a RPG light type of like you have a spec tree, like you have dialogue options between you do these long missions. It's semi-open world, and then you do these long action missions where you're like, fleshing out the game's narrative. At the end of those missions, you like sit in the RoboCop, the recharge chair, and you like get therapy done. And there's like speech trees. Like none of this stuff is like on a Mass Effect level or anything like that, but it exists. It's in the game and it's there. And like there's things like you have like a citizen's voice thing where you can affect justice positively or negatively, or affect like the town's opinions of you positively or negatively. I haven't all the way beaten this game, but I don't know how much this actually affects the game. I'm probably like 20 hours into it, so I know and it feels like I'm wrapping it up. And I know that nothing is going to happen in this game that's going to make me go back on my opinion because it's impossible. Like it's already gotten so much goodwill with me. But yeah, so it's like an action game with RPG elements, like modern game. But you're fucking RoboCop. Oh, and RoboCop can sprint, which helps because you want to be able to move around and just absolutely murder punks. Just get a fucking job, pay a bill, you punk. And if you don't, then we don't have any problems. And RoboCop doesn't have to explode your balls and then head. Yeah. There's a trophy, by the way, for shooting someone in the balls.
Is there?
Oh yeah.
Oh, cool.
Oh yeah. So anyway, that's all out of the way. Let's a quick recap. My 3 honorable mentions are MK1, RoboCop, and Hi-Fi Rush.
Yeah.
My number 5 game of the year. Consult the list because I've already forgotten it. Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Yeah. My number 4, Resident Evil 8 VR. Mm-hmm. My number 3, Pikmin 4. My number 2, fighting game of the year, Street Fighter 6. And my number 1 pick.
Hold on, wait. Let me see if I can. Okay, we're just gonna have 5 seconds of dead silence while I think. Is there any chance at all that I could guess this game?
I mean, if I feel if I say anything, you would.
I can't guess it.
Okay, Super Mario Wonder, because of course it is.
Of course it is.
Okay, first and foremost, have you played any of this at all? Shoot,
nope,
not a 1. Okay,
I own it.
That's half of the battle is already won, friend. So it's a Mario game. So for me, I buy that and I'm playing it the moment it comes in. I'm gonna stop playing whatever it is that I'm playing, which I want to say was RoboCop. I think I was playing the Dead Space remake, which I haven't finished yet. Although I beat Dead Space when it first came out, so that's really not at the top of my list. It's a great game, but I've already beaten it. I was playing Fire Emblem Engage, which I'm a big Fire Emblem fan. Stopped all that shit dead in its tracks. Brother, Super Mario Wonder is the best 2D Mario game I've ever played outside of Mario World. And for me, it goes, for my money, it goes Super Mario World number 1, Mario 3 number 2, Mario Wonder is right there in the bronze medal position. In spirit and in aesthetic, it feels more like Super Mario World than any of the other new Super Mario World or the new Super Mario games did. Those new Super Mario games, so there's the original Wii one, there's new Mario Brothers Wii U, and then there's new Mario Brothers 2 for the 3DS.
Yes.
New Mario Brothers was originally on the DS. So there's 4 games. Nothing wrong with any of those games, but they're very like sterile is a word I would use, or like clinical. Like they're fun, and they like they hit those notes for you. Like they're very well crafted games. They're fucking Mario games, of course they are. But there's something missing about them, like something that you would find in Mario 3 with like crouching on the white platform to find the whistles, or like the P-wing stuff. All these weird little hidden elements. Mario World did that. Magnified it by 10. Like we're talking secret level exits.
Yeah,
like,
the Star World.
Yeah, Star World's like a whole secret thing. The secret colored Yoshis that you wouldn't find until you got to special and all that shit. Mario Wonder is that on steroids. Every single level you play in this game, everyone has a unique feature which is done by the Wonder Seeds and the Wonder Flower things. It's like the main collectible in the game are the Wonder Seeds. You in the game you have to find a Wonder Flower to like start this thing. Which is like the why they call the game Super Mario Wonder. So you never see the same one again twice. And there is like somewhere, I want to say 40 or 50 levels in this game, all said and done. And for Nintendo to make each one of those levels have its own unique thing that happened to where not a one of them feels phoned in, like literally not one of them. Everyone feels great, and like you are just constantly going like, wow, like literally out loud. I said, wow, playing this game multiple times. In the second, this kind of ran away on the internet as a meme, but in the second level, when you get the Wonder Flower, all these piranha plants start coming up out of pipes and just start singing and dancing. And you're like, what is happening right now? And there's so many that you haven't played this game. I don't want to spoil too many of them, but at one point you hit this Wonder Flower and all of a sudden Mario is now running on the wall and it's a top down game. There's like all these little things that Mario turns into. It's just fucking so much fun. Like pure, unabashed, like full grain cocaine level joy here. Like it's just so good. And it's made with all the tender loving care that you would expect at the highest level of Nintendo development. So when this game is released and it says version 1.0 and you look for the update, that it's not there.
Okay, it's already,
this game's done. This game is done, and it's done. So, and what's cool about it, so I've listening to other podcasts and reading about this game. So like there are 5 people who worked on this game that all worked on the original Mario Brothers. And like, so these are people that are in their 70s now.
Yeah.
And they're still coming up with these ideas. Like, so those 5 people are surrounded by kids who are like recent graduates.
Yeah.
And so you have this like old guard, people who have like been like, like preaching and nourishing like the main like tenets of Nintendo development.
The sanctity of Mario.
And then being like raised up on this pyramid base of like young, hungry, talented kids that they just landed their ultimate dream job working for Nintendo. So like you put those together and you shit out this product that it's just mind blowing.
Wow.
I'll say this: any game that you played this year, you should have stopped playing those games, put it immediately to the side, and run over to Mario Wonder, because like I'm pretty sure I know what your number 1 game of the year is. No spoilers, but I'm pretty sure I know what it is, and I know at times, if it's not your number 1, it's your number 2. I know at times you and I have talked off air about it, where you would like complain about this game and complain about the amount of time that you put into this game. And I feel you. That's my experience with Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. There is not a one wasted fucking second in Mario World. Or I mean Mario Wonder. And Mario World for the record. But in Mario Wonder, not one wasted second, not one moment of me playing that game did I ever go, I need to stop playing this game. Like it never felt like a chore. It always felt like the most fun summer vacation you've ever been on.
Yeah.
And as someone who is very much still a kid at heart, like it just reached on into my chest and grabbed my heart and hugged it as hard and as safely as possible.
You are loved, Brian.
And told me over and over, like, you are loved. You are correct
It's
in
not
your
your
taste.
fault.
It's not your fault. We're just here to make you happy. So between this and Street Fighter 6, they both kind of hit those heartstrings for me. Like the waves of nostalgia, things that I grew up with, things that I love and will almost certainly continue to love for the foreseeable future. They both came out with excellent video games this year. But Mario Wonder was just that extra little nudge of wonder, pun very much intended, that made me pick it as my number one game of the year. Bar any. That's my number one top dog, Mario Wonder.
Solid pick.
I think so too. And I think you're going to see Mario Wonder probably on a lot of other people's lists too, because it's a fucking Mario game and like a really, really, really well made one at that. So those are my picks. Any floor discussion before I turn this around and open up to you on part 2?
No, because I only played one of your 5 games, and I think you've only played one of my 5 games. So again, the Venn diagram,
right there in that sliver.
Yeah. But the list itself, I think, is pretty great, just based on your defense of your opinions, but also that combined with just the general reception. Mario Wonder is being lauded. It is nominated for several Game of the Year awards. Yeah. Street Fighter 6, same thing. So those are pretty good. I love Pikmin 3, so it makes sense that would be there. Resident Evil 4 again is also, at least in Jeff Keighley's Game of the Year. It's one of those. Mm-hmm. Not Resident Evil 4. You said Resident Evil VR. VR. Yeah, but that makes sense though to me as well. And then your number 5 game was Zelda. That was the one surprise. But I haven't played Zelda, so I can't say anything about it. But I don't want it to be a good game because I haven't played it.
Right.
So I want
want your decisions to be
right validated,
ones,
right? So I don't want to have missed out on anything. So I'm actually pretty happy with it. Happier than I thought that I would be with your list.
Okay.
Which I thought just might be some kind of like weird obscure thing that.
Tattoo Assassin's my overall number 1 pick because I played it this year and all the other years too. Exactly. No, so there we go. Those are my top 5 games of the year. We're going to come back on part 2 and we're going to find out Uncle Bob's list when we come back. Join us.
Come back.